On September 26, 2017, Fortnite Battle Royale released for free in early access for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Everyone at the time didn't think much of it, but since the game was free and on console, it had many people intrigued to give it a try. Now, if we fast forward to the current day, Fortnite is one of the biggest games right now and one of the biggest games ever created. But in a Battle Royale, you need a map, which has points of interest. And with Fortnite having many seasons and many map changes, that leads us to this iceberg: Fortnite locations ranked on popularity. Grab some popcorn and drop risky with me as we go over this iceberg. Our first entry is Salty Springs. Salty Springs was a location on the Fortnite map since the game first launched in September 2017. Salty Springs was a small area with a couple of houses, but if you chose to land there, you better be prepared as it was one of the more popular areas during its time. A fun fact to note about Salty Springs is that it survived the entire duration of Chapter 1 and also survived the black hole, which I think we all know about. And in Chapter 2, Season 5, Salty Springs and Tilted Towers said, "Hey, you know what? Let's make Salty Towers." I still remember the battles in Salty on the roof where everyone would rush to get that one chest, and I can remember having a couple of pickaxe 1v1s here, which I won my fair share. Pleasant Park was a small neighborhood that had a park right in the middle with its famous soccer field where many 1v1s happened and many deaths happened too. Pleasant Park and a location coming up later in the iceberg, Retail Row, are the only two Fortnite POIs to exist in some form from the launch to Chapter 2, Season 8. This would make them the oldest POIs in the game. Pleasant is one of those places where no one on the team will get mad if you drop there, but you just have to be prepared because a couple other teams are probably thinking the same exact thing. Tilted, oh Tilted. I feel like this is Fortnite's most famous location ever, and it's for a good reason. Tilted was a smaller city that had many famous buildings like the Clock Tower, apartments, and even Trump Tower. That was a joke, by the way. People call it Trump Tower, but I don't actually think it's called that in the game. Tilted was added to Fortnite in an update 2.2.0 on January 18th, 2018. Funny enough, when Chapter 3 came out, there was a huge area with ice, and everyone had a feeling it would melt, but what would be under the ice? Well, crazy enough, in update 19.10, on the same date, January 18th, 2022, Tilted was revealed to be back. I think the location coming back on the same day is a really cool little fact that you can share with your friends, because I didn't even know that. I'm going to be honest with you guys, most of Chapter 2 I didn't play a lot of the seasons, so if I'm wrong with any of this information, just correct me in the comments down below. The agency was a POI added in Chapter 2, Season 2, and then removed in Chapter 2, Season 3. The agency was located in the center of the map and had its own AI boss, Midas. Killing the boss would drop Midas's drum gun and an agency keycard. There are some storyline details that relate to this POI, like the device event, but I'm not the best at explaining lore and I don't really know Fortnite's lore that well, so if you want to know a better explanation, I would recommend a video that is dedicated to just explaining the lore. Stark Industries was introduced in Chapter 2, Season 4, and only had one season on the map. The location was a massive factory that had a lot of Stark robots. This POI had a boss, and that was Iron Man. Killing Iron Man would get you Iron Man's Unibeam, Iron Man's repulsor gauntlets, and Iron Man's keycard. A fun fact to know about this location is that the vault at Stark Industries was the only one in the game at that time that didn't contain a supply drop inside. Any named POI on its first day is always very hectic. I can remember in Chapter 3 when Tilted Towers finally came back, there was so many people going to that POI. But if you think about any new season when it comes out and the new POIs, usually most of the lobby is landing there for the first couple days. Greasy Grove is a legendary spot which contains houses, a gas station, an equipment store, and my boy, der burger. Well, actually, that stupid taco took over, but let me calm down. I don't want to get too mad at the taco. The lore of Greasy is actually pretty deep, and I found out that in Chapter 1, Season 6, the Pizza Pit business sabotaged der burger by releasing cockroaches into the restaurant and having it shut down. This is why the two were at war. Greasy has also been frozen in Chapter 1, Season 7, and the most famous thing I think at Greasy is Taco Time. In Season X, players who are in Greasy will randomly start dancing to the Taco Time dance, making every player unable to build or shoot for a period of time. Retail Row, as said earlier in the iceberg, is one of Fortnite's oldest POIs. Retail Row has 21 chests and 21 ammo boxes, making it one of the better locations to drop. In Chapter 1, Season 8, half of Retail Row was destroyed because of the volcano eruption that happened after the unvaulting event. In Chapter 1, Season 9, the destroyed part of Retail was replaced with a POI called Mega Mall. In Season X, Retail Row was back. In Chapter 2, Retail survived the Black Hole event and was there for the entire chapter, but Retail wouldn't be able to make it to Chapter 3, as the island flipped and Retail went with it. Loot Lake is a very iconic location and it has been in the game since it released, and also has a lot to do with the storyline, with the 0 point being really close to it. Loot Lake is a huge lake that has a single island with a house on it. Loot Lake has went through many changes with a purple cube named Kevin. Shout out to my boy Kevin. He's a real one. But basically Kevin made his way to Loot Lake and then fell into the water in Loot Lake, making it bouncy and purple. In Season 6, the island from Loot Lake was taken by the cube and went around the entire map. Loot Lake also returned to the map in Chapter 3, but instead of being a POI this time, it was a landmark. In Chapter 4, Fortnite decided to add something called Loot Island, which is basically the island from Loot Lake, but instead of being on the ground, it will be in the air as a floating island, sort of similar to what it was in Season 6. Fatal Fields was a POI that was added to the game when it first came out, and it survived all of Chapter 1, with it being removed at the end of the chapter in the Black Hole event. Fatal Fields was a big giant farm with barns and some houses, and was a pretty solid spot to drop if you didn't want to go to a crazy hot drop, but you wanted some good loot and a few other players to kill. Snobby Shores was a POI that was added to the game in the same update as Tilted Towers, coming out on January 18th, 2018. Snobby was a rich seaside neighborhood that was on the edge of the map. Me personally, this is one of my favorite spots to go to and had a lot of loot there too. One fun fact about Snobby is that near the actual location itself in the mountains, there was a base with a huge rocket, which launched on June 30th, 2018, and started the Fortnite lore that we know today. Paradise Palms first became a location in Chapter 1, Season 5, and is a desert city. The one thing about this location most people will remember was the ATKs, which were super fun to use at the time and really helped fit in with the POI and the season. Happy Hamlet was another POI added in Chapter 1 and was a small town located in the snow biome of that season. One cool thing about this location is that it can spawn in drift boards, which is basically a hoverboard that you could use in your match. Lazy Lagoon was a small lagoon that had a pirate ship in the middle of the POI. Lazy Lagoon replaced Lazy Links in Chapter 1, Season 8. Near the ship was a pirate camp which was needed for a challenge in week 1 of that season. In Chapter 3, Season 3, Daily Bugle turned into Lazy Lagoon. This Lazy was inside a volcano and had the same pirate ship in the middle of the POI. In this version of Lazy Lagoon, it also had pirate-themed buildings all around the ship. Neo Tilted was added in Chapter 1, Season 9, and is a futuristic version of the POI we talked about earlier in this iceberg, Tilted Towers. In the Unvaulting event, Tilted was hit by the volcano, and it was rebuilt up and had the Singularity Sword hidden and disguised as a statue in Neo Tilted, which was used in the Mech vs. Monster event. Neo Tilted also had slipstreams around the POI, which were really fun to use and really good to travel around. Lazy Lake was a POI added in Chapter 2, Season 1, and lasted the entire chapter. The POI itself was similar to Tilted in the sense that it had a bunch of buildings and was a small city/town. In Season 2, the Gilded Lady building was replaced with something called the No Sweat Insurance building, which was also seen in Tilted Towers and Neo Tilted. Added in Chapter 2, Season 1, and staying the entire chapter, just like Lazy Lake, Misty was a European town and had a bunch of buildings. If you remember Happy Hamlet from earlier in the iceberg, Misty Meadows is basically the same POI, but the buildings are arranged differently and the whole POI isn't snowy, which is why it may not look like Happy Hamlet at first. Holly Hedges, following the trend that has started, was added in Chapter 2, Season 1, and you guessed it, it stayed there until, well, actually, Season 7 of Chapter 2, where the aliens took over and changed the POI to the name Holly Hatchery, but then the POI was changed back to Holly Hedges in Season 8 of that chapter. Holly Hedges was a small town that had hedges going all around the edge of the POI. The name Holly Hedges was a little Easter egg to give some appreciation for where the headquarters is, in Holly Springs, North Carolina. Sweaty Sands was added in Chapter 2, Season 1, and removed in Chapter 2, Season 7. Sweaty Sands was a town located right on the beach with huge hotels and houses. One fun thing to note about this location is that it was actually supposed to be called Sunny Shores. You could also find buried chests in the sand at the beach. The Shark was a very cool POI, which was a mansion located on the island in the left corner of the map and was added in Chapter 2, Season 2. The Shark had a boss in the POI, which was Sky, and killing Sky dropped Sky's assault rifle, which was basically a better gold scar. Sky's grappler was also dropped along with the Shark keycard. In the next season, the Shark got flooded and turned into Sharky Shell. The Yacht was a POI, which if you couldn't tell by the name, was a big giant yacht. The yacht also had a bunch of rooms, like Meowscle's private room, a bar, a gym, and a mini jacuzzi, and guess what, even a helipad. Oh, and how could I forget the golden statue of Midas? The yacht had two bosses, with it first having Meowscles, and killing Meowscles would drop the Meowscles Pew Pew rifle and the yacht keycard. Deadpool then took over the yacht in week 7, and killing him dropped Deadpool's dual hand cannons and a Deadpool keycard. If you guys ever went on a yacht and there was a big giant cat, what would you do? The Grotto was a POI that was added in Chapter 2, Season 2, and was a hidden underground area that was run by Shadow. Shadow was a faction in the Fortnite story that was led by a character named Chaos Agent. If you don't know who Chaos Agent is, you could ask Fernando, but he might be busy. This location also had a boss, and that was Mr. Brutus. Killing Brutus would drop Brutus's minigun and a Grotto keycard. If you gotta ask me, I think Brutus is a pretty chill guy, so would I really kill him? I don't know. If you remember the agency we talked about a couple entries back, this POI, the Authority, replaced it in Chapter 2, Season 3. The Authority was in the middle of the map and was the Shadow headquarters. The owner of this POI was Jules, and Jules was also the boss of this POI. Killing Jules would drop Jules' drum gun, Jules' glider gun, and an Authority keycard. The POI also had a wall around it since Chapter 2 Season 3 was the huge water season. It needed a way to protect itself from getting flooded. Caddy Corner was added in Chapter 2 Season 3 and was a POI that had a gas station and a house for a cat. Why would this POI need a house for a cat? Well, the boss of this POI was Kit. Kit was basically Meowscles 2.0, and it was revealed later on that Meowscles' son was actually Kit. Killing Kit would drop Kit's charged shotgun and Kit's shockwave launcher, along with a Caddy Corner keycard. A little Easter egg to why Kit is at this POI is when Deadpool took over the yacht POI, Meowscles had to move somewhere on the map, and he went to a landmark called Box Factory, and this is exactly where Caddy Corner was placed. The Fortilla was added in Chapter 2, Season 3, and was used by Ghost since they didn't have access to the agency because it was turned into the Authority. This POI was no joke. With landing here, you basically are choosing hard mode with the POI being filled with henchmen, NPCs, and a boss on top of that. The boss was Ocean, and if you killed Ocean, you were able to get Ocean's Burst Assault Rifle and Ocean's Bottomless Chug Jug, which is unique in the fact that it is not a one-time use, but goes on a 1-minute cooldown, and you could of course get the keycard in this location for killing the boss. In Chapter 2, Season 4, it was the Marvel season, and Dr. Doom took over Pleasant Park, making it Doom's domain. Dr. Doom's ego was so big, my guy had a statue in the middle of the POI of himself. Weird flex, but okay, Mr. Doom. In the POI, there was also Doom henchmen in the area, and all the houses had red ID scanners on them. This POI also had a boss, which you guessed is Mr. Ego himself, Dr. Doom. The cool thing about this season was upon killing the Doctor, you would get superpowers like Dr. Doom's Mystical Bomb and Dr. Doom's Arcane Gauntlets, with of course the Dr. Doom keycard as well. Salty Towers, if you couldn't tell by the name, was a mix between Salty Springs and Tilted Towers and was added in Chapter 2, Season 5. Salty Towers was basically Tilted Towers, but sand filled most of the buildings. This was also the first version of Tilted in Chapter 2 of Fortnite. I also had some not so fun memories here.
How does this kid already have the Manda?
Come on, bought me all the tears. Come on, bought me all the tears! My mom bought me all the tears. My she's under the ground. Cat. No!
Corny Complex was a POI that was introduced in Chapter 2, Season 7, and it replaced a POI called Colossal Crops, which was a POI we will talk about later in the Iceberg. This POI was very similar to Frenzy Farm, another POI that we will talk about later in the Iceberg, with it being more futuristic than Frenzy. Corny was a farm that was controlled and operated by IO, aka Imagined Order. The boss at this POI was someone who may sound familiar, Dr. Sloan. Killing Sloan's ass would drop the Sloan had a pretty cool ability, and when she was alerted, she would spawn in 2 clones to distract the player from the real one. Condo Canyon was a POI added in Chapter 3, Season 1, and lasted the whole chapter. Condo is a POI in the canyons and has a bunch of buildings with a pool in the POI and a gas station nearby. In Season 2 of the chapter, the IO took over the map and took over multiple locations, with Condo being one of them. The player could choose to help the 7 fight the IO and take back Condo in one of the weeks of the season. Also, Balbros was at this POI if anyone was interested. I know at least one person wanted to know. Sanctuary was another Chapter 3 POI and was the home/base of the 7. The 7, if you don't know the lore of Fortnite, is basically a group of individuals who have the same goal, which is to protect the 0 point, and if you couldn't tell by the name, there's 8 of them. I'm just kidding, there's actually 7 of them. The Sanctuary had a boss, which was Mr. Dwayne, aka The Rock, aka The Foundation. Killing the Foundation would drop the Foundation's MK7 assault rifle, but the funny thing about this boss is when he would attack you, he would use rocks to damage you, which if you don't get it, then I'm sorry, but I don't know what to say. To all my Spider-Man fans, you already know what the Daily Bugle is, but this POI was added in Chapter 3 and was replaced in Season 3 of the chapter. The POI had the main Daily Bugle building with 2 other apartment buildings next to it. It also had spider webs in the POI, which you could use to bounce up and get on top of buildings. Sleepy Sound is a location I think was very slept on, with it being added in Chapter 3 and was a cool POI because it basically had two sides to it. One of the sides of Sleepy was full of normal houses, while the other side had a bunch of apartment buildings, a gas station, and a pool. And wait, did I hear they close at 9:06? That's very specific. Fishstick was also here at the POI and could be hired to help you out, but if it's after 9:06, he doesn't spawn there as the shop is closed. Coney Crossroads was a POI that was added in Chapter 3, Season 1 and was basically a small town with some houses and stores, but the best part was softies. If you didn't know, Little Whip is the best character in Fortnite, so him having his diner here was very important for the Fortnite economy. Coney also had to be saved from the IO during one of the weeks of Season 2, and Whip, instead of being in softies, was hiding in a building. Poor Little Whip. In Chapter 3, Season 1, on the new map, Covert Cavern was a new POI that was added, but if you look at the layout of it, it will look familiar to another POI we talked about, the Grotto. I don't believe there's an exact reason these POIs are similar, but if you guys do know the reason, feel free to correct me in the comments down below. Covert was a location that was underground and was the headquarters of the IO and had Gunner to protect it, who was the boss at this POI. Gunner is IO's strongest member alongside Slode. Killing Gunner would drop Gunner's Stinger SMG and a keycard. The one thing with this SMG is if you used it, you knew the recoil was going to be absolutely crazy on it. There was also turbines that would send you to the top of the mountain. Also, I'll show you guys the best way to
drop
land.
at Covert Cavern. Oh, wait! Guys! Mods ban that guy and blow up his house.
For the first Chapter 4 POI, it's the Citadel. It was added in Season 1 of the chapter, and as of me recording it, it is still on the map. The Citadel was a medieval castle and was the home for the one and only Ageless. Killing the Ageless would drop the Ageless Champion's Excalibur rifle and the Ageless Shockwave Hammer. The Shockwave Hammer was a really fun mobility item, and this version of it would give you 1 or 2 extra charges. I'm not exactly sure how many there was, as I believe they nerfed the normal Shockwave's charges, but I don't know if they changed the Ageless's Shockwave charges, so I'm just going to go off what the wiki says. Slappy Shores is another Chapter 4 POI and is home to the Slap Factory for the new type of juice, Slap Juice. There is also a small town with some houses on the other side of the POI. Neymar Jr. spawns here, and Spider-Gwen also spawns here in the POI, when they added the Spider-Man web shooters back in Season 2 of the chapter. Shattered Slabs was a POI added in Chapter 4 and was an area with some houses and a mineshaft area next to it, with kinetic ores found all around the POI. During Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 1, there was a big event that happened in the middle of the season called the Most Wanted, and this led to the game adding vaults into the game that were guarded by certain NPCs. A faction called Cold-Blooded was introduced in this update, and it had Chaos Double Agent protect the vault at Shattered Slabs. Killing Chaos Double Agent would drop the heisted Breacher Shotgun in the vault keycard. Another boss that was added to this POI in Season 2 of the chapter was Highcard. He was a reskinned Wildcard skin, which was much taller than the normal player, and had a couple guards next to him and would walk around the POI. Killing Highcard drops Highcard's Havoc Suppressed Rifle. Faulty Splits was another POI added in Chapter 4, but this time the POI sadly didn't make it that far, as it got removed in Season 2 of the chapter. I'm sorry, Cooper, I know you love this place, but it was time for it to go. Faulty Splits was most known for the bowling alley in the POI, and in the Most Wanted event, a boss called Double Agent Hush was added. Killing Double Agent Hush would drop the heisted Blink Mag SMG and a vault keycard. Brutal Bastion was a POI that was added in Chapter 4, and it is located in the snowy part of the Chapter 4 map. Brutal Bastion is a big giant fortified area. Some people say that Brutal Bastion is very similar to the POI we talked about earlier, the Sanctuary, and the 7 Outpost, so let me know if you see that. The reason some people say that is because some people believe that the Chapter 4 map is where a lot of the lore from the Fortnite story comes from. Basically, people think this is the beginning of Fortnite's story and the beginning of the island as a whole. A good example of this was the character the Ageless. He was the tier 100 in Chapter 1 and would spawn at the Citadel as previously mentioned. The Ageless is a very young version of Fortnite's villain Geno, so it makes you wonder, was the Sanctuary actually inspired from Brutal Bastion? The boss of this POI was also from the Most Wanted event, being Cold-Blooded Ace. Killing Cold-Blooded Ace would drop the heisted explosive rifle and a keycard. Also, the high card boss can spawn here as well, as previously mentioned in Shattered Slabs. Mega City is the biggest POI ever added to the game and came with a lot of hype, as many people saw this as truly Tilted 2.0. Mega City was introduced in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 2 and was a big giant city that was basically a futuristic portrayal of Tokyo. Mega City also introduced the grind rails, which were these rails that you could find in Mega City, and if you jumped on, you would go in a certain direction, with the player trying to sprint would speed up the grind rail. You also can jump from one grind rail to another, which made the POI have some cool parkour jumps that you could do. One thing I cannot forgive this POI for is killing my man Little Whip. Bro, why did we do that?
Yes! 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 No! No! Fuck!
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would.
Mega City also has the High Guard boss, which can spawn here as well. Tomato Town is an OG spot, with it being on the map since the beginning of Fortnite. Tomato Town was not really a town, and it was more like a pit stop area. In Tomato Town, it had a restaurant called Uncle Pete's Pizza Pit and a gas station nearby. You can also find the Pizza Pit restaurant in Save the World. In Chapter 1, Season 5, the Pizza Pit restaurant was replaced by a giant temple, and the location turned into Tomato Temple, which we will talk about later. Anarchy Acres, or Mr. Acres, was a POI that was added in Chapter 1, Season 1, and was a huge farm that had fields for crops, barns, sheds, silos, and basically anything you would find on a farm. This POI was very similar to the other POI we talked about earlier, Fatal Fields, which was also on the map at the same exact time. One cool Easter egg was in the blast-off event that was at Snobby Shores, where the rocket is launched, a thruster from the rocket actually lands in Anarchy Acres, and you could find it at the map at that time. Shifty Shafts was a mineshaft POI that was popular back in Chapter 1. They added back Shifty in Chapter 3, which was really fun to see because it had been a couple years since it was in the game. For me, when I see Shifty, it reminds me of certain streamers like Hamlin's getting wins there. Lucky Landing was a POI added in Season 3 of Chapter 1. This POI was added kinda out of nowhere, but it was actually added for the Chinese New Year and actually stayed on the map until Season X, aka Season 10 of Chapter 1. It has Chinese-styled buildings in the POI with cherry blossom trees. It was a very good-looking POI that you would drop a couple times, but never really prefer to go there every game, like a Tilted Towers or a Pleasant Park. Dusty Divot was the remains of the POI Dusty Depot, after the meteor hit it in Chapter 1 of Season 4. The POI was basically a huge crater in the ground with a facility in the middle. At the beginning of the season, the POI didn't have much life, but as the season went on, the POI got more and more trees and made the POI come to life. In Dusty, there was these things called hop rocks, which were consumable items, which when consumed would grant a low gravity effect to the player. In the middle of the POI was the meteor that landed, and the Fortnite government wanted to build a base around it so they could examine it. The meteor started to open up, and whatever was inside was able to escape. The thing that escaped seems to be visiting the island, and it was the visitor from the Seven. The visitor went to the villain/evil lair near Snobby Shores as previously mentioned, and during Season 4 there was a filming crew filming a movie, and they had props like rockets. The visitor found a movie prop rocket and modified it using hop rocks from Dusty, and the rest is history. Hey, this is me from the future, and I just wanted to say that I missed a couple things when recording this part, so let's go over them now. In Season 4, in Dusty Divot, there was an ice cream truck that had seemed to crash in the crater. When players went to break the ice cream truck, they realized that the ice cream truck had 100,000 HP. If you managed to put yourself, or with the help of your friends, through the pain of destroying that thing, you would get rewarded with one chest. Yes, one chest. In Season 5, Dusty Divot was left to rot, and the remains of Dusty Depot were made into a diner called Dusty Diner. In Season 7, the diner was changed to a Christmas theme for the winter/Christmas season. In Season 8, there was a lava pool that was added to the center of Dusty. And in Season X, Dusty Divot would get removed from the map. Risky Reels was added in Chapter 1, Season 4, and was a drive-in theater that had a projector with a huge projector screen that you've been watching this video on the entire time. It also had a ticket booth and some other things, like a bunch of cars in the location. Risky was a fun POI to drop, but
do you guys remember on June 14th, 2018, it was the day of Search 7 Chests at Risky?
All jokes aside, there was a challenge that you had to do where you had to search 7 chests at Risky in one game, and it was very hard to do because first, the POI itself wasn't that big, and also everyone in the lobby would go for this challenge, so it kind of became like a meme and a joke in the Fortnite community that some people still make jokes to this day of. Lazy Links was added in Chapter 1 Season 5 and replaced the POI Anarchy Acres we talked about earlier. Lazy was a wealthy country club that had tennis courts and a golf course. If you played Season 5, you would know that in that battle pass there was things called toys that were added, and one of them was the golf ball toy, and you could actually play golf if you wanted to at Lazy Links. Lazy Links was also the first ever location that replaced a removed location in Fortnite's history. Polar Peak was a POI added in Chapter 1 Season 7, which was the winter/holiday season as the season started in early December of that year. In the season, a huge ice glacier made it to the island, and that was Polar Peak. When the season started, there wasn't much there, with most of the POI just being a big giant thing of ice, but as the season went on, the ice melted and revealed a castle. Inside the castle was someone called the Ice King. who was the ruler of the Ice Kingdom, which in short, later in the season there was a live event called Ice Storm. With the ice melting at Polar Peak, the Ice King needed a plan to stop the ice from melting, and that's where this live event comes into play. A ice sphere appeared at the top of Polar Peak, and you could eventually see the Ice King inside of it. Every TV on the island had a countdown on it, and when that reached 0, the sphere broke, and the Ice King started his plan where he summoned a bigger version of himself and covered the entire map in snow. Also, during the unvaulting event we talked about a little bit ago, a fireball from the volcano hit Polar Peak and caused a huge crack in the ice. In the ice was an eyeball of a creature which was able to break out and go into the ocean nearby. The creature that went into the ocean would be identified as Devourer. Now people thought Devourer might try to harm the 0 point, so someone called the Paradigm volunteers to help take down the Devourer with the help from a big giant robot called Mecha Team Leader. As we talked about earlier, the Paradigm hit a sword in Neo Tilted and was able to defeat the Devourer. Now the last remains of Polar Peak were finally gone. Or were they? The block is the most unique POI ever in my opinion, as it lets players create their own POIs and submit them to Fortnite to be picked as the block's POI of the week. This POI was added in Chapter 1 Season 7, and there were so many cool POIs that were chosen, but there's always one that will stand out, and probably not for the reason you think. On April 2nd, 2019, a map called Mysterious Mansion would be added to the block. Now at first you might think this is just a scary/horror mansion that was cool to have on the map, but in the basement of the POI, there was a chair that was kicked over with a rope above it. As you can tell, this was telling something much darker than what anyone could have thought, and this caused a huge reaction with people questioning how could this ever get into the game and not noticed by Epic. Did they not even look at the map at all? A couple hours later, the map was removed from the block and the previous block map was put there. In Chapter 3 Season 2, it was the Resistance season, where the IO drilled through the map to try and fight the 7, and they were able to get the Tilted Towers and destroy a lot of it. In Season 3 of Chapter 3, the block returned as Block 2.0, and the players can make their own restaurant, apartment building, or the shops area to replace the old one since Tilted needed to be rebuilt. Players could use their gold to vote for whatever build they wanted, and the construction of the building was completed on August 20th. Sadly, the block is not returned as of me recording this script, but maybe it will return at some point. Sunny Steps is a POI which was added in Chapter 1 Season 8 and was a POI that had pyramids and buildings inside of it. In Chapter 2, this POI was removed from the map, but during Season 7, there was something called the Mothership, and inside the Mothership was a floating island that had a pyramid from Sunny on it. In Chapter 3, Sunny Steps returned, but this time as a landmark, similar to Loot Lake, and was called the Temple. Mega Mall was a POI added in Chapter 1 Season 9, which was the futuristic season after the events of the Unvaulting event where the volcano destroyed a lot of the map. Mega Mall replaced Retail Row, which was destroyed in the Unvaulting event and basically was a huge futuristic mall. To the west of this POI was the houses from Retail Row, so if you didn't want to drop on the mall, you could drop there and make your way over to the mall. Slipstreams were also here at this POI, as previously mentioned from Neo Tilted. Personally, this POI was really cool, and even though I didn't play much of Season 9, I do remember this POI and how cool it was to drop there. Gotham City was added in Season X and replaced Tilted Town, which we will talk about later. This was by the name you could guess, a Fortnite x Batman collab. When you are in Gotham City, you get redeploy, so if you fall off a building, you can pull out the Bat Glider and glide around. This would also be the final version of Tilted in Chapter 1's map. Slurpy Swamp was added to the game in Chapter 2 and would stay in the game until Season 7, where it would turn into Sludgy Swamp. Slurpy was a huge swamp that had areas full of slurp water that if you stood in the slurp water, you would start to regen health and shields. There was also a huge slurp juice factory, sort of similar to Slappy Shores in the Slap Factory. There was also a glitch that was very broken where a player could stand in a certain spot in Slurpy Swamp, and the swamp would consistently heal the player, and while that was happening, the player could use a fishing rod to get more fish to heal themselves. This was broken because even though the storm would do a lot of damage over the game, with the fish and the infinite healing from the slurp, you could just survive forever. If you want to see this done, a lot of YouTubers made videos on it, like CypherPK, so check it out if you're interested. Frenzy Farm was added in Chapter 2 and was a farm sort of similar to Fatal Fields/Anarchy Acres. When Frenzy got removed in Season 4 and replaced with Stark Industries, it was the first time in Fortnite history at the time that there was no farm location anywhere on the map. Pretty interesting. Weeping Woods was also added in Chapter 2 and was a huge forest that had cabins inside of the POI. There was wooden bridges in the POI with campsites also in the POI. Weeping Woods would get flooded in Season 3 of Chapter 2, but would return back to normal near the end of the season. Wolverine was a boss at Weeping Woods in Season 4 during the Marvel season and had a speed boost. Killing Wolverine would drop the Wolverine claws. My guy Kyle was also at Weeping Woods. As said from the wiki, quote, Kyle is a strong, large-built man with tattoos on his chest and arms and a heavy, strong accent. He is commonly seen wearing a lumberjack-like outfit. Kyle is a great guy. Just look at him. The rig was added in Chapter 2, Season 2, and was an oil rig that was located in the sea on the map. The rig is owned by a company called SpillX, which is a fuel and gas station chain in Fortnite. SpillX owns things like gas stations at Condo Canyon, gas stations near Daily Bugle, Mega City, and you kind of get the point, they own basically any gas station that's ever been in the game. Even though SpillX owns the rig, an organization called Alter, which would eventually become known as Shadow, used the rig as a base. At the rig, there was a boss called Tiantina, who was a part of Alter, and killing her dropped the Tiantina Kaboom Bow and a rig keycard. If you remember from earlier in the Iceberg, we talked about the agency and how that turned into the Authority. Well, the ruins replaced the Authority in Fortnite Mares 2020, and it is more of a demolished version of the Authority with Shadow Midas there as the boss. If you were able to kill Shadow Midas, he would drop Shadow Midas' drum gun, which was honestly pretty fun to use. After Fortnite Mirrors was over, Shadow Midas did get removed, but the POI was still called the Ruins, and if you listened close enough at the POI, you could still hear Midas there. In Chapter 2, Season 5, the POI would get removed and replaced with a 0-point POI that we will talk about later. Colossal Coliseum was a big giant coliseum that was added in Chapter 2, Season 5. Each time you loaded into the map, there was a 1 in 4 chance that one of the variants of the arena could spawn in. I thought this POI was really cool, and maybe one day it could return, or return maybe with a twist. Hunter's Haven is a POI that was added in Chapter 2, Season 5. This POI is in the same location as a landmark in the season previously, Sentinel Graveyard. Sentinel Graveyard was added in Season 4 in the Marvel season and was home to the Fallen Sentinels, which if you don't read the Marvel comics, are these huge big giant robots. Getting back to the Hunter's Haven POI, this POI is an area for bounty hunters for the IO to stay. This POI had a bunch of modern houses with items inside for the hunters. This POI would get removed the next season. The Spire has a lot, so buckle up. The Spire was introduced in Chapter 2 Season 6 during the Primal season. The Spire itself is a chromium tower with a flower bud at the top. In Fortnite's lore, the Spire was made to seal the 0-point and let it heal. In short, the 0-point is really important, so protecting it is also very important. In the Batman/Fortnite 0-point issue 5 comic, we discover that the Spire itself extended all the way down to the bridge. You're probably asking yourself, what is the bridge? The bridge is the main headquarters of the IO, or the Imagined Order, and the 0-point is down there. The Spire gets all the way down to the bridge and destroys it, letting the 0-point escape from the bridge. Now, if we go to the Season 6 cinematic trailer, our guy Jones, or the guy you might call Tifu, he has a big role in the story. Basically, in short, Jones used to work for the IO, whose leader is Dr. Sloan, and their founder is Geno. In the cinematic, Jones is getting orders from Sloan, but he's like, nah, I'm good.
Have your orders, now get out of there!
I'm gonna do what we should have done from the very start. I'm going to the 7th!
You took an oath! You're betraying everything we stood for you!
Jones fights for his life in World War VI as the 0-point is becoming unstable, and then a huge rock falls from the sky. The rock somehow has a Minecraft piston door, and the foundation comes out. Now, if you remember from earlier entries, the foundation coming out of a rock is a pretty clever thing Epic did here. Jones tries to talk to the foundation, but my guy comes out like round 1 Mike Tyson and starts throwing those punches. The foundation is about to KO Jones, but Jones says,
I can get you to Geno.
And the sisters?
I can get you all of them. But I need your help to fix that.
Now, if you remember earlier, I said Geno is the founder of the IO, so he does know Geno, or at least he would have some info, and the Foundation does not like Geno in the storyline, so he sees this as a deal and save Jones's life. If you loaded into Season 6, you would go through a little mini live event thing where you, the player, or as the game calls the players, loopers, which is basically the game calling us NPCs, which I find quite disrespectful, but it's okay, we'll let it slide. Jones and the player, or looper, go around closing portals, which causes a flower to blossom in the sky. Long story short, all the portals get closed, and the 0-point looks to finally become stable again and close and seal. But then the blossom starts turning red and black, and the 0-point becomes unstable again. With no options left, the Foundation forms a tower, which is the spire that leads up to the 0-point. The Foundation at the top of the tower says that Jones needs to overload the device to seal off the 0-point. Jones freaks out, but Foundation says that he will meet Jones, and Jones must tell him everything. If Jones does overload the device, Foundation will be sealed up into the spire, and it will trap Jones in the loop. The loop, in short, because this could be explained for even longer, it is basically just a concept that when we play Fortnite matches, that is one loop. When you die in Fortnite, you're resetting the loop, and when you load back into a game, you're starting the loop again. Basically, the main idea is that when you start a game, that's the beginning of the loop, and when you die, you're restarting the loop. Basically, you can never escape Fortnite. That's why Jones calls us a looper, because we are stuck in the loop and he isn't. With no other options, Jones decides to overload the device and seal foundation and make himself trapped in the loop. Now with all that lore done, hopefully you're still with me. The location itself isn't that crazy as it's just a tower with some buildings around it. There's two bosses at this POI. First is the Spire Assassin, who was the boss at this POI, and hints in her name, she was here to protect the Spire. If you killed Spire Assassin, you would get Spire Assassin's Recycler and 30 gold bars. Glyph Master Raz would overthrow Spire Assassin at the Spire and become the new boss. Raz has an ability where he can TP and dash through builds. Killing him would drop Raz's explosive bow and the Spire artifact, which was a quest item at the time. Holy, that was a lot. Logjam Lumberyard was a POI added in Chapter 3 and was a factory that would cut down trees and store the logs there. When Chapter 3 started, the whole map was covered in snow, and as the weeks went on, the map's snow would eventually melt away. This is why Tilted wasn't on the map at first, but as the snow melted, it got revealed. People were sad that all the snow would go away from the map, as leakers showed the entire map would lose its snow. Epic, being the good company they are, listened to the feedback, and they still removed some of the snow, but they kept a decent amount of it near Logjam. So we were never able to play in Logjam without the snow, but there was screenshots that came out of what it would look like. Rocky Reels is the same as Risky Reels, but was a different variant that had a Paradise Palms theme to it. Rocky was first introduced into the map in Chapter 3 Season 1 and would get removed in the end of the chapter live event. Rocky would get taken over by the IO in the Resistance season, but the 7 would eventually take it back. Camp Cuddle was introduced in Chapter 3 Season 1 and was removed in Season 3 as Reality Falls replaced it, which we will talk about in a couple entries. Camp Cuddle was an area on the map owned by Cuddle Team Leader with multiple shacks at the POI. 4 of the shacks belong to Quackling, Metal Team Leader, Cuddle Pool, and Cuddle Team Leader. Near the camp itself is a lake that has a watchtower on it. As a theme you maybe noticed in Chapter 3, during Season 2, the Resistance season, it was taken over by the IO, but then reclaimed back by the 7. Fun fact to note is that Camp Cuddle during Season 1 of the chapter had the least amount of chests compared to any other POI at that time in that season. If you remember Covert Cavern, this POI is basically the same exact thing, but when the IO invaded, the name changed from Covert to Command Cavern. Gunner was still the boss at this POI, and above the POI itself was an IO airship. If you went onto the airship, you would find the Huntmaster Saber boss, where if you killed him, he would drop the Huntmaster Saber thermal rifle, which was Shock's favorite. Logjam Lotus / Junction is a weird POI that Epic did in Chapter 3 Season 3. In Season 3 of the chapter, it was the vibing season, where there was the reality tree, which I will get into very soon. Basically like the Coliseum POI, there was a chance for 3 of the variants of the POI to spawn, which were actually POIs that were already on the Fortnite map before. Funny enough, one of them was actually Colossal Coliseum, one of them was Tilted Town, and another was Lazy Lagoon. Once all the switching POIs stopped, the POI became Logjam Junction, which was just the Wild West version of Logjam Lotus. So you remember Command Cavern we talked about earlier? Yeah, screw that POI because that's in the past. Welcome to Rave Cave. Rave Cave was what remains of Command Cavern, but it was turned into a rave party area that had a roller coaster inside of it. During Chapter 3, Season 3, the season Rave Cave was introduced, Fortnite added back an item called Ballers. Basically, you would hop into a ball and control it. You could use this baller to hop onto a roller coaster and ride it. This POI also would play music when you were in it, and it was really fitting for the season because Season 3 was called Vibing. Reality Falls was added in Chapter 3 Season 3, and was a POI that had a huge giant tree that has a flower blooming on top of it. The flower that blooms on top of the tree looks very similar to the bloom that we see in the Season 6 live event that we talked about during the Spire entry. This location had a waterfall with a cave inside of it. Reality Falls also had these slurp mushrooms that you could jump on that would give you shield when jumped on. Reality Falls would replace where Camp Cuddle was on the map and would turn into the Reality Tree POI we will talk about near the bottom of the iceberg. Overall, this POI was really cool to look at and was definitely not a bad drop. I just wanted to pause the video because I have a very important announcement. This video is sponsored by the Henchmen Bros. They are a group of 5 passive AI henchmen that are all from opposing sides. One of them is from Ghost, one of them is from Shadow, one of them is from The Last Reality, one of them is from the Imagined Order or the IO, and one of them is from the 7. These guys do everything together. They fish, they hunt, they play games, and they're always by each other's side. So why would I bring this up? Well, that's great that you asked. In Chapter 3, Season 3, the Henchman Bros have not been seen in so long. It has been multiple seasons and no one knows where they are. In Reality Falls, behind the waterfall, there's a pile of rubble that is blocking off an entrance into a mine shaft. This rubble pile has 5 trillion HP. Yes, I said 5 trillion. If you remember the ice cream truck from Dusty Divot, it's sort of similar to this, but there is a catch. The 5 trillion HP can be done in multiple matches. You don't have to do it in the same match. And anyone in the lobby can do it, or anyone playing Fortnite, so it's pretty much a community challenge. The rubble itself could be instantly destroyed by a cow catcher, but that was a glitch and not intended. But when you saw what was behind the rubble, you would see that the Hench Bros were there just vibing around. I mean, the season is called Vibing. Grim Gables was added in Chapter 3, Season 4 in Update 22.10, which came out on October 3rd, 2022. The reason I bring up the date is because Grim Gables was a mansion that had a cornfield and a shed and gave off haunted house vibes, and since this was in October, we all know that's the month of horror. The boss at this POI was the Inquisitor, and the henchmen here were 2 zombified and NPCs, to really give it that Halloween horror feel. To find the boss, you had to go underground at Grim Gables. Killing the Inquisitor would drop the Inquisitor suppressed SMG, a pumpkin launcher, and firefly jars. This POI was honestly pretty underrated when it came out, but looking back on it, the SMG the guy would drop was not that good, so I can understand why many people wouldn't want to drop here. Chrome Crossroads was Coney Crossroads that we talked about earlier, but this time it had a chrome look to it. Let me explain the theme of Chapter 3 Season 4 for this to make sense. Chapter 3 Season 4 was called Paradise, and this was not the paradise you think of, as Season 4 introduced this new substance called chrome. Basically, this group called the Last Reality wanted to use this substance to destroy the island. The scientist, a member of the Seven, was studying the substance when it broke free and was able to spread throughout the island. If the chrome touches you, you can turn into a liquid, so pretty much you just do not want to touch it. Also keep in mind the name the Herald, as it will be important very soon. So the whole season, all the POIs were off the ground, and this turned into a big game of floor is lava. Chrome Crossroads had chrome everywhere, and a lot of the parts of the POI were floating in the sky to be safe from the chrome. The real question was, is Softies safe? And I can tell you that Softies was good and it was off the ground, so I was able to get some ice cream there during that season. Herald Sanctum was the Herald's version of the Sanctuary. We all remember that the Sanctuary was the base of the Seven. Well, this new character, the Herald, said, no, it's mine. Basically, the Herald was the villain of the season and was responsible for the chrome spreading throughout the island, so we can all thank her right now. The whole POI was full of chrome and had this massive chrome tornado in the middle, which if you went in the tornado, it would give the player the chrome effect and launch them into the air. The Herald is also the boss at this POI, and she had her little throne room. If you were to attack her, or if she noticed you, she would spawn in these chrome wolves to try and kill you. She also had this ability where she would become invincible in a bubble, because she is too scared to fight the loopers. Like, come on, we're NPCs and you're too scared to fight? When you kill the Herald, she would drop the Herald Burst Rifle and 4 chrome splashes. Cloudy Condos is Condo Canyon, but the version that is all in the air because of the chrome. Only thing to really say is that Balbros is still here for anyone that asked. I'm just gonna say this now, the next couple entries are gonna be chrome related locations. Shiny Sound is the chrome version of Sleepy Sound, which was the location with fish sticks. There really isn't much to say here, but fish stick is still here, so that's always a plus. Tainted Towers is the chrome version of Tilted. The clock tower in Tilted has been saved by the No Sweat insurance and flies around doing its thing. The Block 2.0 buildings we talked about earlier in the block entry are still here, but don't get affected by the chrome. Back to Chapter 4, we got Anvil Square. Anvil Square is a medieval town with a castle in it. During Season 2 of the chapter, Epic did a lot with Attack on Titan, and had a basement area in Anvil Square called Jaeger Family Basement, and this was for a quest for the Attack on Titan challenges. This location was pretty cool, but would get destroyed in Season 3 of the chapter because the ground below collapsed. Breakwater Bay was added to the island in Chapter 4, Season 1. Breakwater Bay is a location on the coast and is a coastal town. This location is okay, but since it is in the corner of the map and doesn't offer crazy loot, I personally drop at other locations. Lonely Labs is another Chapter 4 POI, and is a POI on an iceberg with research labs on top of the iceberg. This location is honestly pretty good, as you can zipline down near the water to get even more loot, and it's on the edge of the map, so usually only a few teams will drop here. Frenzy Fields is once again a Chapter 4 POI, but I just gotta say, all these farm POIs sound so similar. I'd be getting so confused on which one is Chapter 1's POI, which one is Chapter 2's, etc. It's probably just a me problem, but I've been doing this iceberg and it's been messing me up this entire time. As I said, this POI is a huge massive farm, like the other farm POIs we talked about, but I think this one is definitely the biggest. This POI is not bad, but personally I never drop here. At this point, we're just going to get every Chapter 4 POI out of the way. So this POI is called Naughty Nets, and it was added in Chapter 4, but this time it was added in Season 2 of the chapter. It is a Japanese-inspired fishing town, and it's a really solid POI, and I wouldn't mind dropping here. Kenjutsu Crossing is actually a really fun spot to drop, and it of course was added in Chapter 4 Season 2. This POI again is a Japanese-inspired town, but it has a huge castle in the POI. The doors also at this POI are Japanese-inspired, so it's a cool touch they added. Steamy Springs is another Japanese town that was added in Season 2, and is similar to Lucky Landing as it has cherry blossom trees. This POI has these hot springs, which if you were able to swim in it, it would heal you, which is pretty cool.
Anything you need, I'll get that. Let me take the lead, don't sweat that. If you wanna eat, I'll chef that. Come and move your feet, I'll let that.
Dusty Depot is an OG Fortnite location that was on the map when the game first came out. Dusty was in the center of the map and was 3 warehouses that each had different colors. One fun thing that me and my friends did was called the Dusty Challenge. We would drop Dusty and hopefully survive, and then break down all of Dusty so there was no warehouses left, and we had to stay at Dusty, so if the storm came, we were screwed. We talked about Dusty Divot, but in Season X, Dusty came back. At Dusty, in Season X, a rocket was being built, which would eventually launch there in the end event. Dusty's also come back in Chapter 2 in Season 5, where it was a landmark called Dusted Depot. In Chapter 3, there was another landmark called Displayed Depot, which was a blue warehouse.
I'm recording.
Wailing Woods was added to the game when it first came out. Wailing Woods was a huge forest area with cabins, and it also had a maze that had a little tower in the middle. At Wailing Woods, they had this fox tower, which I couldn't find gameplay of, but I believe you could edit the tower like it was your own build. In Wailing Woods, there's a hatch that came into the map, and this hatch led to the bridge that we talked about earlier. At the time, the bridge wasn't known, and this was very mysterious for them to add, making many people create theories about it. Wailing Woods would get removed in Season 8 of the chapter. Lonely Lodge was next to Wailing Woods, and was a forest area that had a wooden lodge. Lonely was in the map when the game first came out, and in Season 4 would have the Hero Mansion added to the POI. Lonely would survive all of Chapter 1, but would not survive the black hole. Flush Factory has a special place in my heart because it is the POI I landed for my first win back in Season 1. Flush Factory was a huge toilet factory that had lots of metal to be harvested. Flush Factory would get destroyed when the Iceberg hit in the winter season. In Chapter 2 Season 5, Flush Factory would return as an unnamed location. Haunted Hills was added in the same update as Tilted in Chapter 1 Season 2, and this is a cemetery that has a church in it. In Season 6, a big castle was added on the hill, and Mr. Pete's Pizza Pit and Durburger trucks were added here. In Season X, a statue would be added to Haunted Hills that would later become the Stoneheart Skin. As we talked about earlier, Tomato Town would become Tomato Temple in Season 5, as the POI would turn into a huge stone temple that had steps leading to the top. At the top of the POI, the tomato head was changed to fit the POI. The Tomato Man skin would also get a Tomato Temple edit style. Frosty Flights was a very cool POI being added in the winter season in Chapter 1 Season 7. This POI had 2 hangars, which are structures meant to hold aircraft, which is why this POI was special. At this POI, Epic added the X4 Stormwing, which was a plane that you could control and fly around the map. This POI would get removed in Chapter 2. Tilted Town is a POI that was added in Season X and replaced the POI we talked about a while ago, Neo Tilted. Tilted Town was an old western town with dirt roads, and it was basically a set from any old Wild West themed movies. When you entered Tilted Town, you could not build or break anything to fit the old Wild West theme. Tilted Town would become Gotham City on September 21st, 2019. Steamy Stacks was added in Chapter 2 Season 1 and was a huge cube-powered power plant. If you remember Loot Lake's entry from like 5 hours ago, we talked about Kevin the Cube. Basically, Kevin is not the only cube, and we would find out much later with the Cube Queen that there were many, and I mean many, cubes.
Dude, this has to be the Revelations boss fight. Like,
There's 2?
Are they about to have a fight? I'm getting out of my chair for this one. I'm pretty excited, guys. Fortnite.
Wait, Matt, is there a bunch of cubes?
What
Yep,
the fuck?
yep, there's a bunch of cubes.
Is this the end from Minecraft?
Dude, is this the Exo Zombies Descent ending?
This POI was owned by Kevolution Energy, which is a reference to my guy Kevin, and shout out for real to Kevin, like, that guy is the GOAT.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Craggy Cliffs was added in Chapter 2 Season 1 and was a coastal town. This POI did have the restaurant Sticks, which is always a plus. Bony Burbs was added in Chapter 2 Season 6, which was the Primal season, and it replaced the POI Salty Springs. This POI is like Salty Springs with a primal twist to it. It kind of looks like a damaged Salty Springs that kind of looks like Tilted Town at the same time. Colossal Crops was also added in the Primal season and was similar to Bony, as the POI that was here before was Colossal Coliseum, and it seems to be the remains of Colossal Coliseum, but had farm areas like Fatal Fields. This POI would turn into Corny Complex, which we talked about earlier. Chonkers Speedway was added to the island in Chapter 3 Season 1 and was a big racetrack that had buildings around it in an area for fans to watch. All the cars here had upgraded tires so they could go off-road. If you remember Spillex from the rig, they actually sponsor Chonkers. Also, Chonkers is the only POI from Chapter 3 to stay the same for the entire chapter. The fortress was added in Chapter 3 Season 2 when the IO drilled through the map. The POI itself was a giant drill that was owned by Dr. Sloan. There's also IO henchmen here as well. During Chapter 3 Season 1, there were many earthquakes leading up to the season, and this is the reason for that. The fortress had a boss, and that is Sloan, as we talked about earlier in Corny Complex. Sloan drops the Mythic Striker burst rifle when killed. The Collider was a POI added in Chapter 3 Season 2, and this was a huge tower device meant to destroy the 0 point. This POI was guarded almost as heavily as Area 51, as Sloan was here with Huntmaster Saber and IO henchmen. The Collider kept getting more energy and finally reached its max level, but the 7 had a plan. If you remember the mecha team leader I talked about earlier, once the 7 heard about the IO's plan, they started repairs on the mecha team leader. This led to the collision event, which happened at the end of Season 2, and the goal was to destroy the Collider. The Collider does eventually get destroyed in the event and is removed from the map. Chrome Jam Junction was a Chrome version of Log Jam Junction. Not much to say for this POI, as it is basically Log Jam Junction, but it just has Chrome everywhere. Moisty Mire was added to the map when the game came out, and it was a swampy area. Moisty would not see any changes until Season 4, where in Season 4, as I mentioned earlier, was a season where there was a movie film crew filming a movie. In Moisty, they changed the area to a movie set to fit in for that season, which was cool to see because Moisty didn't get that much love before that. In Season 5, Moisty would get sadly replaced with Paradise Palms, but in Season X, Paradise Palms would become Moisty Palms, which we will talk about very soon. There was also a monster at Moisty, and that was the Merman. Legend says that if you played Fortnite at 3 AM, he would spawn in and chase you if you landed at Moisty. Well, that's actually what my friend JStation told me, so it could be false. Junk Junction was added in Update 2.2, the same update as Tilted, and was a junkyard that had a bunch of destroyed cars and things you would find at a junkyard. This place was very good for farming metal and had 2 buildings in the POI. From my experience, no one ever really dropped here, and I even made a video landing here and getting a win. Junk Junction would get removed with the black hole in Season X. If you remember the Loot Lake entry, I talked about an island that came up from Loot Lake and would fly around the map. Well, the remains of Loot Lake were what Leaky Lake was. In the center of the POI, there was a vortex which if you got too close would send you flying in the air. On November 4th, 2018, the vortex would be removed, and in Season 7, the POI went back to Loot Lake. Pressure Plant was a POI that was built over the volcano that went off during the Unvaulting event. This was the build site of the mecha team leader and where it launched when it fought Devourer. In the POI, it had a building you could go in and loot. Moisty Palms was a POI that was a mix of 2 locations, Moisty Mire and Paradise Palms. This would be the first ever location to have a mix of 2 locations. When you entered Moisty Palms, it had a unique feature that when you crouched, you would become a prop. Before this location was Moisty Palms, the sign changed to tease the location. Dirty Docks was added to the island at the start of Chapter 2 and was a POI on the water that had shipping containers in the POI. This POI also had a Dusty Depot blue warehouse in the POI. Coral Castle is a personal favorite of mine because the music is straight heat. Coral Castle is pretty much just think of like an underwater castle, but it's above the water. Doesn't make the most sense, but Coral Castle was added in Chapter 2, Season 3. Stealthy Stronghold is a POI that was added in Chapter 2, Season 5 and is a huge walled-off biome. The POI had a boss, and that was Mr. Predator. Predator could use a cloaking ability when fighting him, and when you killed him, he would drop the Predator cloaking device, 2 slurpfish, and 30 bars. Some noise clips that are in the game were taken from the actual film Predator made in 1987. The Joneses was a POI in Chapter 3 and was a village area that was filled with a lot of Jonesies. Basically, in Fortnite, there are such things called snapshots, and each different Jonesy you see in like the item shop is a different snapshot of Jonesy. So all of the snapshots of Jonesy lived here. Now, it's time for some trivia. Hello everybody watching around the world, I am Thorn Please, and welcome to Thorn Trivia. Today, we have the wonderful ItzLogicTK, nVaZive, and it's Fernando with us. How are you feeling, ItzLogic? How are you feeling, dude?
Pretty good. I think I could,
Think you're gonna win?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win. I think I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay. nVaZive, how you feeling?
I'm feeling somewhat confident, you know. I hope to leave this as a winner, you know.
You been studying at all, or you've been in those libraries?
I've been taking notes recently, you know.
Fernando, any thoughts? Think you're gonna win this, or?
Yeah, I feel confident.
Alright, Fernando, you feel confident? I like to hear that. Alright, let's get right into Thorn Trivia. Alright, the first question is, when was the Jonesy's POI added to Fortnite? A. Chapter 3, Season 2. B. Chapter 3, Season 1. C. Chapter 3, Season 3. Or D. Chapter 1, Season X. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to think. Time is up. McGurk, what is your answer?
B.
You're gonna go with B. Okay.
Chapter 3, Season 1.
nVaZive.
I'm thinking the same thing. B.
Okay. Fernando?
C.
C. You think C, Fernando? Switching it up. And the answer is, drumroll please. It is B. Chapter 3, Season 1. McGurk and nVaZive get a point. Fernando, sadly you do not get a point. But it's okay, you can bounce back. The next question is, which character would spawn in the cell in the Jonesy's POI? Brainiac, A. B. Bunker Jonesy. C. Jonesy the First. Or D. Little Whip. Let's start off with Fernando this time. Which do you think it is, Fernando? A, B, C, or D?
A.
A. Okay. Brainiac. nVaZive, what do you think?
I'm going with B again.
B. Okay. Bunker. Okay. McGurk.
I'm probably gonna go with B again.
Okay. So Fernando with A, nVaZive, and McGurk. You guys are going B, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The answer is, drumroll please. Brainiac, A. So Fernando gets the point and ties up the trivia. Fernando tying it up. In the Jonesy's POI, there is a flag that has a symbol on it that is a tattoo from a character that is at the POI. Which character is it? Jonesy the First, Bunker Jonesy, Ludwig, or Jones Unchained? We'll start off with ItzLogic. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking probably
technical difficulties. So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking A. Jonesy the First.
Okay, Jonesy the First. Write that down. Okay, Jonesy the First. nVaZive, what are you thinking?
I'm also thinking A.
Okay, Fernando, you need some time, or you got an answer?
B.
Okay, B. We have 2 votes for Jonesy the First and 1 for Bunker Jonesy from Fernando. And the answer is Jonesy the First. So McGurk and nVaZive, you guys are tied up at 2 points. Fernando, you are at 1 point still. You gotta probably be getting these questions all right, I'll be honest. Alright. A small blue Cavern can be found at the Jonesy's POI. Where is this cube from? The Spire, the 0 point, the bridge, or from Donald Mustard himself? We'll start off with ItzLogic.
I'm gonna say A, the Spire.
Spire, okay. nVaZive.
I got B.
You got B? Fernando? Got 2 different answers here. Fernando, you gonna make it a third different, or you gonna join Logic or nVaZive? An A or B?
I would also have to go with A.
I would also choose A. Damn, okay. 2 votes for the Spire, 1 for the 0 point. And the answer is the bridge, C. So no one gets a point.
What?
No one gets...
Wait, the bridge?
Yes, the bridge. Alright, so it is, the score currently is ItzLogic has 2 points, nVaZive with 2, and Fernando with 1. So Fernando, you can still tie it up here. Alright. This is the final question though. In Bunker Jonesy's car, on his bed, he has a couple golden pillows. How many golden pillows are there? 3, 4, 5, or 2? Fernando, go first, man. I think you got this.
B.
B. Okay. nVaZive, what are you thinking?
I got 0 clue. I'm just say B also.
B. Okay. McGurk, you gonna join them, or you want to be different?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm joining them. B.
Well, the answer is B. So, That means that nVaZive and McGurk are tied up at 3 points. Fernando has 2. And I wasn't really planning for a tiebreaker, so you know what? We'll come up with a tiebreaker after this ad break. Synapse Station was a POI added in Chapter 3, Season 2, and was a workshop area that was owned by the Seven, and the scientist could be found here with all of his machines. This POI had buildings that were very similar to the Sanctuary, and in Season 2, a vehicle called the Armored Battle Bus would be added to only the Sanctuary and Synapse Station. Shuffled Shrines was a temple POI that came out in Chapter 3, Season 3, and this was the season when Indiana Jones was added in the Battle Pass, so in the temple there was a gold artifact of my guy Tomato Man, where you could find behind a room that was locked with a secret code. When you grabbed the artifact, a boulder would chase you, being a reference to the movie Indiana Jones. From our trivia match, we talked about the Joneses, but in Season 4, when the Chrome came out, that turned into Fort Jonesy. The POI was all off the ground with pillars supporting it, and Castaway Jones and Relaxed Fit Jones would spawn here, with Jonesy the First and Bunker Jones here as well. Butter Barn was the Chrome version of Neo Butter Barn added in Chapter 3, Season 4. Basically, Neo Butter Barn was the Butter Barn restaurant that was turned into a futuristic version. Butter Barn was lucky enough to have a no-sweat insurance platform to lift the restaurant up so the Chrome wouldn't be able to get to it. In Chapter 3, Season 4, the Chrome hit the island, and a lot of the POIs changed the name of their location. So, for example, like Little Whip, it was Coney Crossroads, it turned into Chrome Crossroads, right? So a lot of the named locations changed their name, and the Jones did change its name, so which name did it convert to? There's either High Jones, Fort Jonesy, Chrome Jonesies, or Joneses, sorry, Shimmering Joneses. Those are the 4. So...
Jones.
Okay. nVaZive, what are you going with?
B.
B, Fort Jonesy. Alright, McGurk, what are you going with for your first?
I have to be C.
Okay, C. And then nVaZive. A or D?
Let's go D.
Get D, and then A.
Yeah.
Alright.
A and C.
The answer was Fort Jonesy. nVaZive is our winner of trivia with Thorn trivia. Sorry guys, cut that out. And
holy shit.
Anything you want to say to your fans, nVaZive? Anything you want to say? Kevin watched Thorn trivia.
I couldn't do without Thorn for hosting this, you know.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And Fernando and ItzLogic, you guys got anything to say to your fans?
It's been a good time in the running.
Okay.
For somebody that didn't really know anything about POIs or Fortnite lore, I think I did pretty good.
Yeah. No, I agree. Fernando?
You made it top 2. Not 1, though.
Thank you, everyone, for watching Thorn Trivia. The producers are already telling me that our show is canceled because of how shit the production was, so probably won't be back anytime soon. But see you guys in the next one. Sludgy Swamp was Slurpy Swamp, but in Chapter 2, Season 7, the motherships and the aliens came into the map and abducted parts of Slurpy Swamp, making it into Sludgy Swamp. The legends we talked about earlier, Hench Bros, were also here to just see how the location was doing and making sure, everyone was okay. Holly Hatchery was another alien-invaded location, which was Holly Hedges, which we talked about like a while ago, it was a while ago. This POI was an alien area that was inside of a box that had anti-gravity effects. The whole POI was pretty similar to Holly Hedges. Corny Crops was a POI that was added in Chapter 2, Season 8 and was Corny Complex after the events of Operation Skyfire, where the mothership explodes and cubes land on the island, leaving a huge mess. The location is similar, but the landscape is very different, making it a new POI. This POI was alright, but you can see why it's pretty low on the Iceberg. The Pyramid was a location that was in the middle of the island and added in Chapter 2, Season 8 and was the final level / version of the Convergence. This is similar to the Herald Sanctum, as this is where the villain of the season stayed, which in this season was the Cube Queen. In the center of the POI, you could see the Cube Queen. This is also where the Cube Queen would open a rift to the last reality in the end event. If you remember the POI we talked about a little bit ago, Shuffled Shrines with the golden Tomato Man head, this was the Chrome version of this POI. Not really many changes, just Chrome was all around this POI. If you remember our Reality Falls POI entry, we talked about the reality tree and how it had a bloom above it. Well, in the reality tree POI, the tree itself has no leaves or bloom at all and it just looks like a dead tree. Also, Chrome would spread throughout the area below the tree. Rickety Ridge was a flooded version of the Rig POI we talked about a while ago. The POI had sharks that would be in the water, and in week 3 of Chapter 2, Season 3, there was a challenge that was to dance on top of the crane at Rickety Rig. But that crane would disappear once week 4 ended, forcing Epic to give players the challenge since they couldn't complete it anymore. I talked about this briefly in the Pyramid POI, but the Convergence is the start of the creation of the Pyramid POI. It is a huge POI in the center of the map that is made out of cubes. This POI was pretty bad since you couldn't get many materials here and honestly deserved to be all the way down here in the Iceberg. Lustrous Lagoon was the chrome version of Lazy Lagoon. The ship that we love at Lazy, which is called the Driftwood, yeah, that thing went on a run leaving Lazy behind. Clearly Driftwood does not care about their friends. Lustrous Lagoon was pretty much just left there to rot. Pretty messed up.
Amazing! Never back down.
The creator of this Iceberg clearly doesn't like this POI because it's on a tier of its own. Starry Suburbs was a POI that you could find the ruins of the location in Season 2 to Season 4 of Chapter 1. But in Season X, the whole POI was revealed to be a suburban area. The POI itself is one of the shortest POIs to ever exist, being added 3 weeks before the Black Hole event. Other POIs that didn't have much time in the map were the Pyramid and the Collider. With this information, you can probably see why the creator put this pretty low, but I think the POI is still not that bad to land at. And that is the entire Fortnite locations ranked on popularity Iceberg. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to add my own, twist. I like just adding, jokes to it. The trivia section. I feel like when you're watching an Iceberg, you don't want it to, completely be just, the facts, and I've done that before. And I tried to mix it up, try to test some things out, and, I think that's just what you have to do. Test things out, see how people like it, and, at the end of the day, I try to obviously make videos that I really enjoy, because the reason I like Icebergs is, I like the final product, and I really enjoyed this video, so hopefully you guys did as well. And that's all I really can ask for, is you guys, can realize I put a lot of work into this video. This took me a while. I started researching this, I think, in June. Now it's August, but I wasn't working from June to August. I didn't really work in July at all. It was a week in June-ish, and then the past week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been just grinding this Iceberg out. Icebergs, they don't take too long, but it's just a lot of work, and I enjoy that. I like the final product, and yeah, so just wanted to thank you guys. I went on a little rant here, but if you guys have any ideas what you want me to do, I don't have to do Icebergs, it's just been convenient to do. I want to try doing more of those videos that I did with the Nazis and the Nazis in Antarctica. Those are shorter videos, and they're fun to research. Icebergs, I can do shorter Icebergs, which I've done in the past, like Minecraft. That one was really short and easy to do. And this Fortnite one I picked, this one was long. It really challenged myself, but I was able to prove to myself that I can do it, which is good. And who knows, maybe I'll drop a 5-hour Iceberg another day or another time. God. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.